folks, Brother Sam here for the Rift Online Church and the Restoration Group. Tonight we are going to continue to discuss the things that you need in order to prepare for God's call on your life. And not just the characteristics you need to prepare, but also the characteristics you're going to need to continue in the call of God for your life. So far we've discussed from the cave to the crown and developing the character necessary to be in leadership, and the process God will take you through. May not be exactly like David's, but you're going to have some kind of cave experience. We've talked about learning to trust the truth. We've talked about the law of intention and decision, giving yourself permission. Tonight we're going to discuss focus. Colossians 3 verse 2 says, set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. Something we got to bear in mind at all times is that we have to keep eternity's view in mind, that everything you do on earth, because you belong to Christ, everything you do should be one way or another for Christ. It should be connected to your relationship with God. A lot of us, we tend to compartmentalize, and I've seen people do this. They compartmentalize so well that people at their job don't even know they're saved. They'd never even guess it. I had that happen with a family member that they're at this event, and they finally got to talk to somebody they've seen at this event for years, and they've known this person for a number of years, and they'd given this speech where they used something from the Bible in the speech, and that the person kind of put two and two together and said, oh, so you're a secret Christian too. So wait a minute, a secret Christian? Now, I understand that the workplaces can be very hostile to Christianity, especially here in Canada. But my goodness, they couldn't tell. There was nothing in your character that pointed to Christ. That's a problem. But anyhow, Matthew 6:33 says, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things will be added to you. A lot of these things that we're pursuing, these things that we want, we prioritize them, but Christ said to prioritize the things of the kingdom, and those other things that you're after, God will give them to you, but he'll give them their proper place. Now, all that having been said, Proverbs 4 verse 25 says, let your eyes look directly forward, and let your gaze be straight before you. This is about focus, and that's what I want to discuss tonight. Not just your heavenly focus, but focus in general, because you're going to need focus in everything. Whether it's in the world of business or in the world of ministry, in personal relationships, in developing your own personal growth. Focus usually doesn't get the press it deserves, for lack of a better way to put it. There's whole libraries practically devoted to motivation, creativity, teamwork, leadership, so on and so forth. But somehow the very thing that is critical to catapulting you to becoming the best version of yourself that you could ever be usually gets left out of the picture. And let's change that right now. What is focus? Well, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, there's several definitions. But for our purposes tonight, there's a few that should be of particular interest to us. One of them is adjustment for distinct vision. Like you do with a camera, you gotta. Now a lot of cameras have autofocus, but the older cameras you have to play with the lens and focus it yourself. But either way, it must adjust in order to get a clear picture. Another definition would be direction. Another one is the center of activity, attraction, or attention, a point of concentration. And then lastly, directed attention. And the truth is, you're going to have to give your directed attention, not just your attention, but that attention must have an intention. I'm going to say that again. Your attention must have an intention. Remember what we said about an intention without a decision is just a wish. Well, in order to make that decision, you need to be focused. You need to have directed attention. And the attention you pay to things must have some specific intent. A lot of times we'll pay attention to the conversation, we're listening, but we don't really have a purpose in the conversation. And think about this. It is impossible to think without focus. Every single thought that you could ever possibly have has something as its center of attention. Now, some of you will say there can be thoughts which don't focus on just one thing. This is true, but they will always have focus. And let's face it, the kind of thinking which constantly divides its attention isn't usually conducive to progress. Have you ever sat in school taking a math test and you couldn't stop thinking of something else? Did that make the test easier or harder? For almost all of us, that made it harder. Why? Because you were distracted. Your focus wasn't there. You couldn't give your directed attention to the test. So focus is absolutely necessary, even to just think. You can perceive nothing without focus. Let's say that again. You can perceive nothing without focus. Without focus, you will not be able to understand what you're seeing or otherwise perceiving. One of the major obstacles to unleashing your vision, to unleashing the purpose of God in your life, is your perception or your lack thereof. When I was in elementary school, there were years my grades weren't as good. Now, the real reason for it was that the years where I was assigned to a seat at the back of the room, I was further away from the blackboard, and if the teacher put anything on the blackboard that was for a test, I couldn't see it. And so I couldn't see it clearly, and I didn't really know what was going on, and I wouldn't do as well on a test because I was doing a lot of guessing. So I couldn't focus. My poor perception of the questions directly influenced how well I did. Likewise, a lack of focus will also lead to a lack of clarity, even confusion with regard to your goals, your plans, your efforts. You look at salespeople, if they're not focused, unfocused salespeople, at least in my experience, which I've been working in sales for more than 20 years on and off, unfocused salespeople always seem to miss out on buying signs from prospects. They're dealing with somebody who they think is a prospect, somebody who could become a customer, and they miss that this person is interested in buying because they don't recognize the signs because they're not focused. Now, and then what ends up happening is they'll also fail to perceive when a no doesn't mean no forever. It may be no today. It may be no for right now. It doesn't necessarily mean no forever. And then in their frustration, because they think it means no forever, they say or they do something that ruins the rapport that they've built with that person. And in both scenarios, they tend to lose business and income. I've seen it happen. I've done it myself a few times because I wasn't focused. I remember one time telling a prospect that I felt they were giving me the brush off, and I was a little bit rude to her, and I didn't realize she actually wanted to do business. It's just not right now. Probably could have made me a few $1,000s off that one. So I was so mad at being told no, I didn't realize it wasn't necessarily a permanent no. Lack of focus. Another thing you got to understand about focus is you cannot learn without focus. It is impossible to learn anything without focus. Now, there's various learning disabilities, of which the key symptoms include the individual being unable to focus. And in such cases, a lack of ability to focus makes learning difficult because the individual cannot direct their attention to the subject long enough or fully enough to be able to assimilate the information being presented to them. You have to be able to focus in order to assimilate information. You have to be able to focus in order to understand what you're reading or watching or whatever method you're using to learn. You have to be able to focus. Now, even without having any such disability, I can remember, sitting in geometry class while Mrs. Murray explained the Pythagorean theorem, or some other particularly important bit of geometrical wisdom, and I was unable to focus because I was too busy staring at a pretty girl, or too busy staring at Mrs. Murray. She was cute. Uh, Most of the guys had a crush on Mrs. Murray. She was pretty. Uh, I didn't learn any geometry that day, to put it that way. And later on, as an adult in the business world, I found that a lack of focus didn't just cause me to miss out on important details, uh, which obviously led to making mistakes. It also led to making the same mistakes over and over again, simply because the lack of focus made it impossible for me to learn what I did wrong. Many, maybe even most of us, through lack of focus, actually position ourselves to be unable to learn the various lessons that God is trying to teach us. God sometimes will put us in a difficult situation. We're so upset and so angry and so frustrated that we don't realize what God is trying to teach us, because we're focused on our discomfort and not the cause of that discomfort. I say that again. Sometimes we're focused on our discomfort or our pain, whatever you want to call it, and not the source of that discomfort. We never ask ourselves what's causing this discomfort. Why is it upsetting me? Why is it getting to me? Why does this get under my skin? What's the real reason this is getting to me? What's the real reason this is taking me out of my game? What is the real reason that this is a distraction? And being unable to ask those questions, or unwilling to ask those questions, guess what? Because sometimes focus is a choice. It's not just, oh, I just can't pay attention. No, very often we choose not to focus. It inevitably leads to frustration. Now, this being said, while we shouldn't beat ourselves up over our various mistakes, we do need to invest at least some of our focus in learning from them. You got to focus some of your attention, because some people say, well, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't dwell on the past. No, I won't say dwell on the past, but you better pay attention to it long enough at least to learn from it. Start to recognize the patterns in the things that happen, because most of us, especially if we experience the same kind of pain or discomfort over and over again, to some extent it's your own fault. Now, that's an uncomfortable thing to say, because sometimes we end up in the same kind of situation, especially in relationships or in business dealings, and let's say we get ripped off in a certain kind of way, and the same kind of way all the time. No, you contributed to this. Sure, they were dishonest, but they would not have been able to take advantage if you had been paying attention. If you had seen the signs, and you didn't because X, Y, Z reasons, you don't even know why. Maybe it's time to ask why. The other thing you got to understand is without focus, you're going to repeat mistakes. You also have to understand that you can't reason without focus. Imagine trying to persuade somebody to try a new product, or even to witness to somebody, while not focusing on the situation, while not focusing on that person. Some of us, and when people do this in sales too, they talk about the general features and benefits of a product that they're trying to sell. And let's say it's the gospel, salvation. You're not going to go to hell. You're going to be, you'll be part of the family of Christ, etc., etc. And that, all those things are great, and you're hoping that one of these things you're saying is going to appeal to this person, and it doesn't always work that way, especially in sales, because people don't care about what you're selling. They don't care how wonderful the product is. They'll care if it solves a problem that they have. And something we fail with in witnessing and in evangelism is we don't address problems. It's part of why modern evangelism is such an incredible failure. And if you think I'm wrong, the Barna Group did a study where they found that only 5% of new converts to Christianity in America remain in the faith after 1 year. Only 1% are still a Christian 5 years later. Does that sound like good conversion or to you? Does that sound like successful evangelism to you? You know, my Savior said, you in John 16:15, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and have ordained you that you would bear much fruit, and that your fruit would remain. If the fruit's not remaining, what you're doing is something God didn't ordain you to do. There's no two ways about it. Because if God had ordained you to win that soul would stay won. But that's another subject. So you got to understand. You got to address a problem that they have. This is why it's so necessary to be led by the Holy Spirit, even in witnessing. It's nice to witness in general, but my goodness, how about having a prayer life? How about having a fast life? How about having a relationship with God so that when He does send you to witness to somebody, He can use you to speak specifically into their life and address a problem that they have specifically, for which the solution is Christ and Him crucified. You know, we talk about this in sales, addressing somebody's pain points. It's great to talk about needs people have in general, but what need do they have in particular? Because you might have everybody needs Jesus. Yeah, that's true. But for some people, that just doesn't register. It's got to hit home. You can't solve problems without focus. Reasoning requires us to focus our thoughts to evaluate information and then formulate an argument for or against, and so on. You also can't, like I said before, you can't solve problems without focus. We've all been in situations where we just couldn't seem to figure something out. At some point in your life, you couldn't figure something out. I remember one time I was dealing with with having to change out the coolant temperature sensor in a car that I had. It was a BMW X5. And let me tell you, they were challenging to work on. Things break on a BMW that don't break on any other car. I kid you not. I replaced the cable that opens the hood twice in 2 years. Broke it. It's in 3 sections. It's just insane. And one section broke, and then the other section broke. But anyhow, and it was difficult to figure out how to get the hood open because most videos on YouTube said, well, step 1 is break your grill. Well, I kind of won't break my grill. But anyway, that having been said, we did find a way to fix it. But it required focus. We had to figure something else out. And with dealing with that sensor, I had to take off I had to drain all the coolant and then take off the lower radiator hose. And it was in a very awkward position. And it was supposed to be easy. I watched a video of somebody doing it so easy. They just popped it right off. And I had so much trouble getting that hose off. It was supposed to be easy, but I couldn't pry that sucker off. And to sweeten the deal, you know, the lawn maintenance crew that was working on the property that we were at the time came by, and they supplied me with plenty of loud noise, which wasn't nearly as distracting as when they started walking up to me and asking questions. I was getting so annoyed. I'm having trouble with this, and I'm trying to figure out a way to remove this thing without breaking the hose and without, you know, because the radiator, the radiator is metal, but the end of it that the hose is attached to is plastic. So if you pull a little too hard in the wrong direction, you're going to crack the end of your radiator, and now you need a new radiator. And so let me tell you, I can tell you it's hard to solve problems without focus. Eventually I was able to get that hose off and complete the repair, but it was so hard with people asking questions. Tiger Woods used to tell a story of how his father would make him practice in bad weather. It was pouring rain outside. All right, put your raincoat out, we're going to play some golf. And so he made him play in bad weather. Or just as he was trying to putt, he'd clap his hands really loud, or yell, or you know, give him a little shove, and do things to distract him while he worked on his game. And this might seem cruel, but it helped him to develop a level of focus that made him one of the greatest golfers of all time. You can't make decisions without focus. Now, I can practically hear some of you saying, uh, sure, you can make decisions without focus. And I'm going to tell you, you're right. However, it's hard to make good decisions without focus. When I say making decisions, I mean making good decisions, making right decisions. And great decisions are pretty close to impossible without focus. Have you ever had someone ask you to choose something while you were really busy and you gave them an answer without really paying attention? I'll admit this. I'll admit it. I do this all the time when my wife is, offering dinner ideas. I'm not really paying attention. If I'm particularly busy, I'll almost always say option B. No matter what the choices are, I'm like, oh, option B. I'll say option A. Well, the first one, and I don't even know what it was. Uh, and if I say option B, I think that's safe enough. And then I'm surprised about what's on my plate because I really wasn't listening. And now, since my wife loves me and wouldn't feed me anything harmful or unappetizing, I can afford to be kind of careless when it comes to that. But in business and in the weightier matters of life and in the matter of the purpose of God for your life and the vision that He's called you to, that kind of decision making will be disastrous. You got to pay attention. You got to have focus. Focus is also required for efficiency and effectiveness. All business systems, including the one we call the gospel, because the gospel is not a business in terms of an earthly business, but is the business of heaven. Every business system that works well does so because they are focused. Intention and effort are not wasted on anything that's not necessary to the process. This is a big problem for a lot of us. We put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into things that are not necessary to the process God has called us to. God wants you to minister in a certain kind of way, and I see people, it gets ridiculous. They add things to what God has called them to do. God tells them to go deliver a prophetic word. They're overly dramatic about it. They're sashaying up the aisle as they're on the way to grab the microphone, and when they grab it, they snatch that microphone, and they're they're gonna hem and haw and maybe do a twirl and start stomping their foot and doing the dance that they learned in church, which really came from the witch doctors. Oh yeah, a lot of these dances people do in church where they're stomping their feet really fast, their arms in the air and all that. Yeah, you can go on YouTube and see witch doctors do the same dance because that's where it comes from. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but that transatlantic slave trade brought some things with it. And very often the guys that were the witch doctors became the preachers, but that's another story. You got to remove things, and I'm not saying it's wrong to have a personality. I'm saying remove things that are not necessary to the process. If God sends you to deliver a prophetic word, deliver the prophetic word and then shut up. Do what He sent you to do the way He wanted you to do it. And my goodness, have the decency to wait for Him to show you how He wants it done. Another problem, we're also very much in a hurry because we're not focused. If you're in a hurry, you didn't focus on what God instructed you to do. And this is true whether you're running a fast food operation, a internet marketing campaign. It's also true for everyday life. Drunk drivers are dangerous because they're unable to focus properly, and their reaction time is bad. Same thing with somebody's, they've been smoking weed. They'll drive real slow and they're kind of paranoid, and their reaction time is a bit slow, and their focus isn't right. And it's particularly with people who are drunk or people who are, let's say, somebody who's texting and driving, which they found is actually more dangerous than driving drunk. Go figure. You're actually more likely to get into an accident if you're texting while you're driving than you are if you're drunk. Now, why is that? Because you're not able to focus on operating your vehicle safely. You're not, and people who are texting, or I know people who they're on Facebook while they're driving, and they're posting something on Facebook. They're on the highway, trying to post something on Facebook. They're like, really, this can't wait another 10 minutes? This can't wait 20 minutes till you get home? And then they end up getting into accidents. And part of why it happens is because reading and typing require your attention, and it takes your focus away from the road and the other people who are on the road with you. It also steers away the focus of your fine motor skills. Lack of focus is dangerous. Now, you tell me whether the call of God on your life is more important than a car. I'll let you figure that out. Focus also speeds up progress. During the spring of my senior year at Princeton, that last semester, I decided to take classes that didn't have exams. Because I knew at the end I was still going to have my, what they call the senior comprehensive exams, where you basically take this long exam that covers pretty much everything you ever learned there, which I did really well on, but anyway, that's a big part of your GPA. So I knew I was going to have that, so I chose classes that didn't have, that the classes themselves didn't have exams. They just had term papers. And so you had papers you wrote throughout the semester, and there was a final term paper you had to do at the very end. And so what I did was I wrote mine during spring break. I had them done. And so I was young and I was full of energy and I had time on my hands. And so I decided to engage in a bit of an experiment. And I'd heard a few times that Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson all had something in common. And that was that they practiced for 5 hours every day, aside from their team practice. And that was part of why they were so good at what they did. And so I decided to, and they all attributed their mastery of the sport to practicing that way. So I decided, I got time on my hands. Let's see what happens if I practice basketball skills for 3 weeks, 5 hours every day. And so I did that, and my friends were shocked. I could dribble with both hands. I could shoot 20-foot jump shots with my eyes closed. I'd look at the basket, close my eyes, shoot. Nothing but net. And I could even do that beautiful finger roll that Michael Jordan would do. Where you go up to the basket and you do the finger roll layup. You switch from one hand to the other and then back. Switch to the left hand, back to the right hand, back to the left hand, back to the right hand, and do the finger roll. And then you turn in midair and watch it go in as you're still in the air. And as you're going under the basket and going past the backboard, you watch the ball go in. I was actually able to do that after 3 weeks. That was just 3 weeks of focus. In my Wall Street days, focusing on troubled 401k plans gave me access to a level of clientele that very few of my peers could equal. Because I figured if almost everybody's going to say no to me, then they won't. If 99 people out of 100 are going to say no, that one yes may as well be big. That's why I went after 401k plans. Not one person's 401k plan. I would go after a whole company's 401k plan. So let's say they had 1,200 people in the plan. That's a $45 million account. Big commissions. And so I made a lot of money. I lost a lot of money. I'm going back into the financial industry. And this time I'm mostly in business for myself. So anyway, you give me 2 years, I won't be in this house. Anyway, that having been said, it gave me access to a different level of client. Gave me access to a different level of compensation. because of what I was focused on. Almost everybody did what you usually do in the business, which is you try to call a bunch of rich guys like CEOs and CFOs and all that, who are worth at least $1 million or $2 million, and you call them and try to get them buy some stock. And they'll do a small transaction, then you do a few more small transactions, and then eventually you get them to bring their real money over to you, and then that's when you start making money. And you do that, a few thousand times until you get a, 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 clients, whatever it takes to have enough clients to do enough transactions to make money. And I found that very cumbersome. And my approach was easier, to say the least. Especially in that market. It was the worst bear market since the Great Depression. 401ks were losing money left and right, and our company had a program that was doing 14.5% in that market, while 401k plans were losing 20, 30, and 40% a year. Those were the easiest sales I ever made in my life because of focus. Now these days my focus is on vision. Now I will admit I'm somewhat obsessed with the subject of vision. I read something about it every day, or I try to read something about vision every day. And whenever I meet somebody new, I usually try, or nearly always try, to get them talking about their vision, especially if they don't think they have one. And everywhere I go and everything that I do, I always end up speaking or writing about it, and the resulting value I deliver to my audience or to my readers or even what will be my clients, it will cause people to seek me out. That focus on vision and discussing people's visions with them will end up bringing me clients. Focus is how Napoleon won battles. A lot of times Napoleon was actually outnumbered and outgunned. So he would focus his whole contingent or whatever army he had at one point, instead of spreading out like everybody else does. And because back then that's what they did. They lined up their armies and they'd head toward each other and start shooting at each other. That's not what he did. He'd take them all and head to one spot in the front line of his enemy, and so he'd throw his whole army at just one section of the enemy, overwhelm them there, because at that section, let's say they have a few hundred people, he's got a couple thousand guys coming against them. Guess what? They overwhelm them. And then the break in the enemy lines gave him the tactical advantage he needed to defeat them. Now, knowing this, we can see, or at least start to see, why focus isn't just important, it's absolutely essential. You are not going to succeed in the call of God on your life without focus. Most of us who are pursuing success or greatness in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in business or ministry or what have you, we're going to pretty quickly realize that to even think of starting that journey, we have to be able to some extent at least, envision a better future. Any worthwhile vision requires attention. It requires focus in order to be realized, and that attention has to be deliberate and directed. You can have the greatest ideas, the greatest plans in the world, but you will never realize them without focus. Fortunately, focus is not that hard to develop. In fact, I think, at least in my humble opinion, it's easier than developing motivation or perseverance. Why? Because you don't really have to learn anything new. That's the secret of tonight. I'm not going to really teach you anything new. Maybe some of the things I just told you might have been a new way of looking at it. But to develop focus, you don't really have to learn anything new. When you need to focus on something, you already have the knowledge. At least a lot of times, you already have the knowledge, the skill, and the passion that's required. And in dealing with a lot of things that you need to succeed at, you already kind of know what you need to do. For example, I'm going back into the financial industry. I know how to take care of my clients, and I have all kinds of ideas. I know the business, But guess what? I still have to focus and study my material and pass my exams in order to get my license. So a lot of times we could probably define focus for our purpose tonight uh, as the decision to direct your attention and effort. And so what we often lack, so we don't really need to learn anything new in order to be able to focus, but usually we lack strategies on how to stay focused and clarity as to just what to focus on. Now, before we get into that, I do think we need to have a clear understanding of exactly how focus functions, and more importantly, what our own focus tendencies are. You have to understand your own nature, because each of us has, every individual has their own nature. Everybody has their own character and temperament. So you got to understand yours and understand, and you have what I call focus tendencies. There are things that get your attention. There may be things that have your total attention that will fascinate you, and I'm like, I might be bored by it. I may not be interested in it at all. Just like there's things that fascinate me that my wife doesn't find interesting in the least. And vice versa. That's just how it is. Different people have different focus tendencies. And and that having been said, there are really just two types of focus when it comes to business and everyday life, or the calling of God on your life. And this is what I call promotion focus and prevention focus. And both are exactly what they sound like. Most of us have a little bit of both, but we also tend to have one or the other as our dominant focus. Now, this doesn't mean that you'll always focus the same way. At the Wall Street firm where I became known as Spidey, there was a manager there who's very aggressive in motivating people. One Saturday morning, he announced that that there was going to be a contest, a $100 bonus to the first person to open a new account in the next hour. You pick up a client in the next hour, $100. Sure enough, about half an hour later, I opened an account. I wanted that $100. And so he walks into the room and said, "Good job, Spidey. Now, if you don't open another account today, I'm going to fine you $100 instead." I never got the $100 bonus. Adam, you never kept your word. And so prevention focus reared its ugly head. I'm scared because I'm broke and I can't afford to pay a $100 fine. I needed the $100 bonus. So yeah, I couldn't afford to go another $100 in the hole. And so prevention focus shows up. And in about 20 minutes or so, I opened another account. And I think I was the first person in that firm to open 2 accounts on a Saturday. And very few people came in on a Saturday, period. Fewer still would open 1 account on a Saturday. And it was pretty much unheard of for somebody to open 2. And the truth was, like I said at the time, I didn't have $100 to spare. And in the rush of it all, it never occurred to me that Adam couldn't make me pay him. I wasn't going to get that money out. I was going to, maybe he could take out a future commission, but, what's he going to do? Grab me by the ankles and, shake the money out of my pockets. The non-existent money. But anyway, so a simple way to determine which is your dominant focus might be to take a sheet of paper, write down a quality you ideally would like to possess, or possess to a greater degree. Now write a few more of them. Then write a quality you think you should possess, not just one you would like to possess, a quality you think you should possess. Which one was easier to write down? If the ideal ones came more easily, then you're promotion focused. If the ones you should have were easier to think of, you're probably prevention focused. And there's no right or wrong here. It's just a different kind of temperament. Now, here's the thing: once you know your dominant focus, or your dominant focus type, you can make a list of goals that you've achieved, as well as goals that you failed to achieve. even though you tried. Once you make that list, you're going to come to some realizations, or maybe you won't. Let me help you. Let's ask some questions. What kind of goals are you good at reaching? What kind of focus led to achieving those goals or failing to achieve them? Answer to those two questions will tell you a lot about how you focus and how your type of focus or the way you focus needs to change. Knowing the answer to those questions will make it easier for you to know the kind of focus you need to achieve any kind of goal. Because once you know the kind of focus you had when you achieved this goal, okay, that's the kind of focus I need again to achieve a similar goal. Or if this is the kind of focus I had and I failed, then maybe I need a different kind of focus. If you're prevention focused, clearly identifying the downsides of not reaching a goal is going to help you achieve it more so than the upsides. And the opposite is usually true for promotion focused people. That being said, there will be times that a situation may call for you to use your non-dominant focus. Like I tend to be promotion focused, but prevention focus does come in handy at times. So with all that said, how do you stay focused? How do we achieve this? Now, it may not surprise you if I say that doing what you love will make it much easier to stay focused. It's a lot easier to do something when you're having fun. It is. That's just how it is. When we love what we do, we feel more compelled to do it. In a sense, passion reverse engineers productivity. I'll say that again. Passion reverse engineers productivity. However, even so, life does at times get the better of us. And there are times where we may find ourselves sucked into a seeming black hole of minutia. We got all these distractions, things that aren't really that important, that aren't very productive, but we got to get them done for this reason, that reason, or we think we got to get them done. And for many of the clients I've had over the years, this is one of the most common issues thwarting their efforts to pursue their vision. They're distracted by a lot of just nonsense. So how do we get focused and stay focused consistently enough that we don't just get things done, but we get what matters done? Because one thing to get things done, some people get lots of things done during the day, but they didn't achieve anything that actually mattered. They didn't achieve anything that would actually help their cause. First, we have to evaluate what's taking away our focus. A lot of people are striving to succeed in business or in ministry, and I refer to this as productivity illusions. They engage in seemingly useful activities. And sometimes these activities are helpful, but they're not mission critical. They're not absolutely essential to the mission. If you don't get, these are the kinds of things that if you don't get them done, nobody's gonna die, and you're not gonna miss the vision of God for your life. But these things, these ridiculously unimportant things, in some cases they're unimportant, they take up a lot of time and energy. And because they involve a lot of doing, sometimes they will mistakenly make us feel as if we've accomplished something. We feel like we did something that day because we did a whole bunch of stuff, but it didn't really move our vision forward. But on some strange, maybe subconscious level, for most of us, this means our mind will play schools out once we got through that list of things to do, and we feel like we can take a break or we're done for the day, and that's what makes those things so dangerous. You gotta watch what it is you're committing your time and your energy to. One of these black holes is what I call the email black hole. In today's digital age, a lot of us have been guilty of this. We spend a lot of time checking emails, and sure, we're busy and we get a lot done. Oh goodness, I got through all my emails. I responded to everybody, and but a lot of times it's stuff that didn't even advance our vision, because most of the emails we get from day to day are spam or somebody trying to sell us something, or just stuff that isn't absolutely essential. Or they're purely social in nature, related to unimportant things that have little or no impact on our success, despite the fact that they do take time. And sure, I will admit we do need to check our email, but it's too easy to get sucked into checking several times a day. Or even worse, spend a lot of time reading and responding to emails that aren't essential to your vision, or which don't produce the results that we say we want. I avoid this by observing a few simple rules. I only check email in the afternoon. I am not checking email in the morning. Unless I'm specifically waiting for something, I'm not looking at it. And guess what? Nobody died. This way, email doesn't take you away from that powerful first hour of the day. Your first hour, and we'll discuss this later in the course, how you spend the first hour of your day makes a huge difference. Second rule is, if I have to check email at any other time other than the afternoon, then I have to be efficient about it. If I'm not busy or if I'm expecting an important email, I'll do what I call a glance and scan. I'm just taking a quick look at the subject lines, that's it. And I will only open an email if I was waiting for it or if it looks like something that demands my immediate attention. This way, email takes seconds to deal with, unless it's something that really matters. Third rule is keep your email responses to 3 sentences, if at all possible. Usually, if a longer response is really needed, it may as well be a phone call. Now, there may be emails that will require a lengthy response, but most won't. So for the vast majority of emails, you can respond in 3 seconds or less. And if you're disciplined about that, that's going to save you a whole lot of time that you might be wasting right now. Same thing with social media. A lot of folks, I might have to add this to this book that I'm writing. The social media black hole. A lot of people spend hours and hours on Facebook. Right now, goodness, I see 22 updates right now on Facebook in this other tab. I got my laptop here with my notes, and I see Facebook open, and there's 22 notifications. Because somebody's been messaging me on Facebook. There's a Facebook group dedicated to dog breeders that have done people wrong, ripped people off, and some of them have done some horrible, horrible things. One of them deliberately sends fake paperwork when they import a dog, and they're very expensive dogs. 5,000 euros or 4,000 euros, which is like almost like 6,000 American, and they'll send the dog with a fake dog passport and fake veterinary paperwork, and they keep the real stuff. And they do this when people have paid them part of the money for the dog and they still owe them a little bit for it. And then that way, if the person owes them anything, they call the animal control authorities in that other person's country. And in European countries, if your dog's paperwork isn't right, they take your dog away and they put your dog down. Regardless of the health of the dog or anything, you don't even get a chance to get the real paperwork. And it doesn't even matter that the breeder did this to you. And so basically they murder your dog. And they use that to extort money from people. And people are trying to get me involved in this. They're messaging me, trying to tell me that they're not really doing this to people on that. I don't care. Leave me out of this. I have nothing to do with this. I don't even have a dog. Why are you messaging me? And I'm aware of the situation because I've seen it in a Facebook group. But guess what? I'm not giving this person my time. They probably, let's see, let me take a quick look here, see how many messages they've sent me. Oh my goodness. They sent me a whole bunch of messages in a short period of time. She even sent me a video. Not watching it. I don't got time for that. Don't get sucked in. Because people will try, and situations will try to suck you in. I could easily probably kill 2 hours of my time if I were to get involved in that argument. I'm not doing it. I don't got time for that. Like the woman said, ain't nobody got time for that. So don't get sucked into the social media black hole and people start arguing over stuff and all that. No, I don't got time for this. Focus on what God gave you to do. And if God hasn't given you something specific to do, my goodness, put your time into something useful. Or something you're going to enjoy instead of aggravation. Then there's what I call the over-organizing black hole. I've been guilty of this. I would create binders of client dossiers. I had a binder of business cards. that I collected from people. I rearranged my desk. I sort all my business cards. Like I said, I had binders. Uh, and I would perform a host of mildly useful but non-mission critical tasks. And before I knew it, I'd use 2, 3, or 4 hours. I used my whole day just, organizing stuff. And don't get me wrong, you need to organize, but sometimes you do it a little too much. And by then, I was tired. All my energy was gone, and I hadn't really done anything that was essential to my mission. That was essential to my vision. It didn't make me any money. Uh, Another black hole you can get sucked into is what I call the planning black hole. Yes, you need to plan. Yes, you need to have goals. But it's very easy to spend more time creating to-do lists. I love to-do lists, I will admit it. Or detailing and updating your calendars than you actually do working. Like I said, I love to-do lists. I like making a list. And I love calendars just as much, maybe even more. However, because my passion is vision, and I basically help people plan their lives and their businesses for a living, and once I have my financial license again, I'm going to be helping them plan their finances. Uh, it's easy for me to get caught up in planning, replanning, and even creating a plan for a plan. That it can take. It could, if I don't watch myself, it'll take up my whole day. Now, maybe in your case, this isn't as much of a weakness. Maybe you don't plan at all. That's a problem. But there's a good chance that for most of you, it does crop up at least once in a while. In my own case, I resolved the calendar issue by not keeping a calendar at all, which I may have to change now that I'm going back into the financial industry. I'm probably going to need to have some kind of calendar. Now, my wife has a tremendous gift for simplicity. She can simplify things really well and organize things really well. And so she manages to track all my various appointments, meetings, and big picture tasks in a calendar that fits in my pocket. And so for the over planning, what I did was give myself a rule. Any plan that I create has to fit several criteria so that I don't lose my focus. The first is simplicity. I force myself to keep plans to no more than 4 to 6 steps. If it requires more than that, I ask myself whether what I'm planning is even necessary and whether I'm overcomplicating it. Second rule is it must be actionable. If it's not a plan that I can at least partly put into action right away, I either file it away, and yes, I kind of have a plan file, or I chuck it. If I can't, if this is something, if I'm planning something that I can't work on right now, what's the point? And set it aside. Put that in future plans. Over the years, my clients have paid me a lot of money at times to help them create strategies that they can use right now. Not a strategy they can use in 15 years. So I've learned to adjust my planning mindset to immediately focus on what can we do right now. And this works well with this simplicity rule. What can you do now? Look at the purpose of God for your life. Look at the things you know are true about the purpose of God for your life, about your mission, about what God has revealed to you so far. What are you capable of doing right now? What do you have the resources for right now? What is God giving you a green light for right now? What can you do now? Focus on that. Another aspect of my rules for planning is it must be something that can be finished. Those of us who love to plan tend to overthink our plans. General George Patton, back during World War II, used to say, a good plan, violently executed today, is better than a perfect plan next week. The truth is that none of us is ever going to come up with a perfect plan. As good as you are planning, you're probably never going to come up with an absolutely perfect plan. So commit yourself to plans that you can complete without overthinking, without overworking, without second guessing and overcomplicating it. And then my final rule for making plans is that every plan must be easy to adjust. Since no plan is perfect, I go into the execution of each plan knowing full well that at some point some course corrections may very well be needed. So should you. Unless you got your plan on Mount Sinai, on stone tablets etched with the finger of God. Make your plans adaptable. And lastly, when it comes to the planning black hole, just get started. Remember that plans are made for doing. So if you're spending more time planning than doing, you probably need to evaluate what you've been doing. Another black hole that will rob you of your focus is what I call the personal growth black hole. While I agree with Jim Rohn and other people that you should work harder on yourself than you do on your job, some of us do fall into the trap of reading so many articles, blogs, books on self-improvement and self-development, one way or another, whether it's for ministry or for business or whatever, that we spend little or no time actually implementing what we're learning. I know people they're going to these like self-help seminars for like 25 years, still haven't started their business. It's like, what are you waiting for? You're like 68 years old. When are you finally going to do this thing? It's a lot like people who spend a lot of time on social media, particularly on Facebook, looking for somebody to prophesy to them. When are you finally going to stop listening to prophetic words and actually do what God called you to do? I feel the same way about people who spend years or even decades going to workshops and seminars, boot camps, and they never put their boots on the ground with respect to their own vision. At some point, it's time to get out of school. At some point, it's time to do this thing. The just shall live by faith, not prophecy. And faith without works is dead. The only reason we know for sure Abraham believed God is he went and did what God told him to do. Now, and so I got to say this. I actually reserve specific times of the day and week for personal growth activities. There's only certain days of the week that I'll watch some videos on personal growth or listen to sermons and all that. I don't do it all the time because I want to make sure it doesn't interfere with the day-to-day operation of life and the mission. Now, there are probably a few more different kinds of black holes out there, but I'm sure you get the idea now. You may have your own specific type of focus black holes. That you may have your own kinds of distractions. But I'm sure. So now I'm sure you get the idea. And it's one thing to be busy; it's another thing to be productive. As Jim Rohn used to say, activity is not achievement. And so we have to be mindful of just what our productivity is producing. That being said, next week we're going to get into some strategies for getting and staying focused. One thing I would like to recommend to you this week, in addition to the things we've discussed so far during this video, and that is to conduct what I like to call a focus analysis. Track your activities and the time you spend on them. Then classify those activities according to how much impact they have on the manifestation of your vision. Take your various activities, start writing it down. Okay, I did this, for an hour today. This took 3 hours. I was at work for 8 hours. Then I did this for an hour. Then I watched TV for 4 hours. Then I went to sleep. And then you wonder why you didn't have time to work on your vision. Well, you watched TV for 4 hours. Not saying it's wrong to watch TV per se, but goodness, 4 hours a day. How are you going to get anything done? And so I want you to track your activities and classify them according to how much impact they have on achieving what God has called you to do and to be. You might be surprised on just how much of your focus you've been dedicating to things that either don't matter much or don't matter at all. I hope this was useful. I hope it was helpful. If it was, feel free to share it. Meanwhile, God bless you and God keep you.